Ostasanalei. Ostasanalei, that is good morning in Cherokee. I'm going to read chapter 10, Holy Spirit, chapter 10 of Hebrews. Holy Spirit asked me to read this morning, and there's so many wonderful things in here. Okay. For the law, since it has only a shadow of the good things to come, and not the very form of things, can never by the same sacrifices year by year, which they offer continually, make perfect those who draw near. Otherwise, would they not have ceased to be offered? Because the worshippers, having once been cleansed, would no longer have had consciousness of sins. But in those sacrifices there is a reminder of sins year by year, for it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sin. Therefore, when he comes into the world, he says, "Sacrifice and offering thou hast not desired, but a body thou hast prepared for me. In whole burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin thou hast taken no pleasure." Then I said, "Behold, I have come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me." It says roll here, but it was scroll in other translations. Today I'm using Ivory Study Bible. I move back and forth from different ones. I use the scriptures too, which are the restored names. Today I said, "Behold, I have come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me, to do thy will, O Yah." After saying above, sacrifices and offerings, and whole burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin, thou hast not desired, nor hast thou taken pleasure in them, which are offered according to the law. Then he said, "Behold, I have come to do thy will." He takes away the first in order to establish the second. By this will we have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Yeshua Messiah once for all. And every priest stands daily ministering and offering time after time the same sacrifices which can never take away sin. But he, having offered one sacrifice for sins for all time, sat down at the right hand of Yah, waiting from that time onward until his enemies are made a footstool for his feet. That could be a whole sermon for someone to do. For by one offering he has perfected for all time those who are sanctified. And the Holy Spirit who bears witness to us, for after saying, "This is the covenant that I will make with them. After those days, says the Lord, I will put my laws upon their heart, and upon their mind I will write them." He then says, "And their sins and the lawless deeds I will remember no more." Now, where there is forgiveness of these things, there is no longer any offering for sin. And we know that Yeshua was the final sacrifice. Since, therefore, brethren, we have confidence to enter that holy place by the blood of Yeshua, by a new and living way which he inaugurated for us through the veil, that is, his flesh, and since we have a great priest over the house of Yah, let us draw near with a sincere heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience, and our bodies washed with pure water. The evil consciousness is a consciousness of your sin. And our bodies washed with pure water, that's water baptism. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembling together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. For if we go on sinning willfully after receiving, this is heavy. For if we go on sinning willfully after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sin, but a certain terrifying expectation of judgment, and the fury of a fire which will consume the adversaries. Anyone who has received the truth of the gospel of Messiah and what he did for us, and it never penetrates, it never goes into their heart, and they might hear it over and over again. But it does nothing. They are an adversary of Yah. For if we go on sinning willfully after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sin, but a certain terrifying expectation of judgment and the fury of a fire which will consume the adversaries. Anyone who has set aside the law of Moses dies without mercy on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. How much severer punishment do you think he will deserve who has trampled underfoot the Son of God and has regarded as unclean the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified and has insulted the Spirit of grace? How much severer punishment do you think he will deserve and has insulted the Spirit of grace? For we know him who said, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay." And again, the Lord will judge his people. That stood out to me this morning about his people. There's so many prophetic voices going on right now about God judging our enemies, the ones that have been abusing us and mistreating us and using us. They're not his people. So one of the judgments for those people is they're given over to their lusts. They're given over to their desires. They are left alone to live in that debauchery. That's not it's a letting go. It is, I think it's a form of judgment, but it's not the kind of judgment that comes on Yah's people who have been sinning. So this is kind of heavy. Because the Lord will judge his people. It is a terrifying thing to fall into the hands of the living God. But remember the former days when, after being enlightened, you endured a great conflict of sufferings, partly by being made a public spectacle through reproaches and tribulations, and partly by becoming sharers with those who were so treated. For you showed sympathy to the prisoners and accepted joyfully the seizure of your property, knowing that you have for yourselves a better possession and an abiding one. Therefore, do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward. For you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of Yah, you may receive what was promised. For yet in a very little while, he who is coming will come and will not delay. But my righteous one shall live by faith. And if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are not of those who shrink back to destruction, but of those who have faith to the preserving of the soul. Wow, I started Hebrews last night, and I didn't get very far, but then Holy Spirit said, come and read 10, so I know there's several things in here for me. And one of them is, do not shrink back. Do not shrink back from what he's asked us to do. Have a wonderful, blessed day filled with shalom.